Welcome to T-Smack, home of the T-Smack. May I take your order?
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I am your host, Josh Scar, and joining me, as always, is the one surviving animal in the Quiet Place universe. It's Alex. Alex, how you doing? You're muted.
I am muted because I am practicing. I'm internalizing.
Well
to be
played.
Quiet.
Well played.
Oh, there's something big behind you, Josh. Don't move. Don't move. It's a kitty. Is that Frodo?
Was that the name of the cat in A Quiet Place? I don't remember. Oh yeah, it was. It was Frodo. They said it once.
Yep.
No,
That's because it's Sam
a Quinn-Quinn.
and Frodo. Oh, hey, Quinn-Quinn.
Although Quinn does look a little bit like Frodo throughout the entire movie. I was like, I want to see my Quinn.
Not only is Quinn-Quinn adorable, but Quinn-Quinn is the way it's positioned, holding on to Captain America's shield for dear life.
Yeah, he has co-opted my my Avengers blanket that I got for Christmas from Ricky.
How are you doing this glorious morning?
I'm absolutely exhausted. I've been up since 1 a.m. Ricky is about to, she is on a road trip to New York to visit some extended family with my mother-in-law and the kiddos.
Now, since she's heading to the New York area, is she going to any marionette shows?
She's going to upstate New York.
Okay.
She'll be near Albany.
I see. All right. She should be safe then.
You would hope so. She's in a mountainous area, although she's not near any bodies of water, so, or at least large bodies of water. There is a lake that's within like a 45-minute drive, but that's not convenient in an alien invasion.
No, not particularly. I do have a quick question. This has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. But what is it with? What is it with directors and having aliens vulnerable to water, which is 70% of our planet?
It's an easy out. Okay. Well, speaking of, that's one of my notes here. That's one of my biggest notes is a very easy out that we have to call out. Because again, I'm pretty sure the pitch meeting will do so as well. But first, speaking of invasions, I believe this comes out on the 3rd. So this coming Monday, it will be my solo episode with Between Two Pods. So Slade invited me back on, and we've already recorded it. It was scheduled to come out on July 8th. So if you want a little extra Josh this week, you're getting it because, I'll be on Between Two Pods on Monday. I'm obviously here. And I was also invited to come back to review it yourself with Sean. So you're getting a lot of Josh in the next 7 days. So enjoy it while you can. But we're going to hear from Joey, Tim, and Slade over at the Game Club Pod, and we'll be right back.
Join me, Joey, and my co-hosts,
Tim
and Slade,
at the Game Club Podcast, where every 2 weeks we review video games, not too dissimilar from a book club. Looking forward to seeing you there, idiots.
Yeah, you stupids.
Tim, do you want to jump in on this?
I will not bandwagon audience abuse.
We've got to figure out how to get you on some more guest spots. You've been on Movie Wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was on the Between Two Pods briefly.
yeah. Before Riverside shit on us and decided to oh, Rebecca's here, Alex is gone. That's just the way it goes, I guess. We love you, Riverside, but that was a cluster bomb of a recording session.
Here's my pitch for to be on their show. Your audience is stupid. Can I be on? Can I be on? Can I be on?
Excuse me, I'm part of their audience. I'm pretty sure I'm more active in their Discord than I am ours. So, Alex, A Quiet Place Day 1. I have plenty of thoughts to get to, but and I think this is one where we can't really discuss too much about it because it does lean into spoilers, because the entire marketing campaign is this is day one. The fleas are invading. And will you find out more about where they come from? No, but that's kind of where the marketing is like, hey, day one, what happened? What is this? And the marketing was very heavy on Jaimin Hinsu, because we know him from previous movies that happen in the future, but they're released now. And then we follow Lupita Nyong'o's character, who has a cat, and we're just like, what shenanigans is that cat going to get us into? We can't really discuss too much about it without getting into spoilers. So let's talk general thoughts, and then we're going to get into spoilers. So Alex, give us your initial thoughts without getting too deep into those spoilers.
So for anyone wondering, Frodo is good boy. Frodo's a wonderful cat.
Frodo's the best boy.
And Frodo survives. Now, this is not to be a spoiler in any manner, but I firmly believe that Frodo is the most empathic, intelligent cat that has ever lived. Because, dear Lord, my cats would have me dead within about 3 minutes when dinner time hit.
Same. I mean, I was missing Quinn because, again, Quinn looks a lot like Frodo, but I was just like, the minute Quinn sees a hand, his motor starts going, and like he purrs so damn loud, and I would have been dead. So would he. Like, I love you, Quinn, but you're gonna get me killed because you're just so happy to see me.
So the rough story is that this is the journey of Sam, played by Lupita Nyong'o, who is dealing with end-stage cancer, living in hospice, and they go into New York City, and day one happens. My impression, and Sam is Frodo is her emotional support cat who survives. So that is a spoiler, but it's a good one. We all want to know if the cat survives the second you realize the cat goes everywhere.
And I mean, this isn't too heavy of a spoiler, since you're already talking about the fact that they acknowledge that it's a service cat, although I think in the marketing they try to play it off more like she's just trying to play it off like, oh, you can't have a cat in here, even though I have a bodega cat. And she's like, oh, it's a service cat. And so like, oh, she's a crazy cat person. That's awesome. But no, it is a service animal. And I think the way they got around this is because they probably wanted a dog, but they knew the dog would whine. They knew the dog would bark. And they're like, what can we do to give her a service animal? Okay, an emotional support cat. Trained actor cats can be pretty good. And cats are legitimately like apex predators. They're designed to be stealthy. So like they have their pads and they walk quietly. The only downside to them, and as far as noise making, is if they see that bird or they see so like thankfully there's no more birds in New York. So I think that was probably where the initial script point went, is they're like, well, we can't do a dog. The dog's going to bark. Even if it's a trained support dog, it will probably bark when it sees one of these fleas. So I like the idea of a cat because, again, it makes sense, just because, again, cats are designed to be stealthy.
In terms of like my initial thoughts on the film, it did take some turns that I did not expect. And we did deal a lot less with day one than expected. I was more seeing this as an Independence Day light Saving Private Ryan kind of movie. And instead it's an intense, grounded, focused, character-centric, emotional journey to get some pizza.
Yep.
And that was really unexpected. And I will say that when I saw the first A Quiet Place, it was in a packed theater Sunday morning. I saw this yesterday afternoon, and I will never be able to replicate that intensity of the entire audience being just dead silent for the 100 minutes ish of the first movie. But there being about 30, 40 people in the theater and respecting the movie and the quiet was really surprising after the last few years going to the movie and how rude the audiences have become. So it was a different turn. It took me in a journey that I did not expect, and I respect the film for that. I do.
I agree. I was kind of expecting more of like a Cloverfield kind of thing. Like I figured there was something that was going to be keeping her on the island, because there is a point fairly early on once she sets out on her own where there's an announcement like, head to the South Seaport. We're evacuating everyone. And like in a normal movie without the stakes that they created with this, which I think they're very good stakes and they make sense. She could have just turned left and made it to the seaport before any other chaos happened, which that scene was fantastic, which we'll get to. But I liked the premise based around her being in late stage cancer. She's in hospice, and the idea that she just wants one last slice of pizza. She wants one last memory of her dad. She just wants to feel something instead of just waiting for death. And coincidentally, it comes at the cost of an alien invasion destroying the entire island of Manhattan. Overall, I think this is a must-see if you're invested in the Quiet Place franchise at this point. I mean, it's had 3 movies now. I think it's a must-see, and personally, this is a little bit of a spoiler for how I view the movie, which, I mean, I'm already saying it's a must-see. I think it's better than A Quiet Place 2.
Yeah,
in terms of overall quality of filmmaking, maybe some people will come into it and be like, it's not scary enough, it's not action paced enough, whatever. I think in terms of like in and of itself, between the 3 movies, as taking them as a whole, I think this is a fairly distant number 2, and then A Quiet Place Part 2 is the 3rd one in the franchise at this point.
Yeah, this is definitely a must-see for me. I believe that it hit strong emotional beats. We're talking spoilers a little bit about things it didn't do that I really expect, that I am wanting at this point with the 3rd in the franchise. I don't believe it's anywhere near the first one. The first one is just whatever magic they were cooking with at that time.
The atmosphere for that one is just, yeah. And there's the underlying mystery of like, what do these monsters look like?
Right.
And like, it's not a great creature design in my opinion. Like, I like the head where it's just a giant eardrum essentially. But overall, like it's pretty, it's basically an armored Cloverfield monster with a little bit of a head redesign, and it like I said, it's more spindly with heavy armor.
Yeah, to me, the creature at this point, I mean, we got some really good looks at it this time because this is day one and there's armies of them. To me, it reminds me of a bat, like a bat with the membrane removed and then like the armored head thingy. It is a cool design, but it doesn't necessarily intimidate me until that flower shell thing comes away. And well, actually, now seeing that apparently it has teeth of some kind of inner membrane teeth thing, that was terrifying. But I find it on par with the second one, though I will probably rewatch this one more because the second one, upon repeated viewings, there is a little bit of diminishing returns because the objective at the end of the first one, a solution is found and you get this badass shot of like, oh, it's going to be weaponized. The second movie is more like, let's get somewhere where we can weaponize it. The endings are too similar. There's not enough world building. As much as I love those actors in that world, that to me felt like they should have jumped ahead past that film. Mm-hmm. Which they are supposed to be filming Quiet Place 3, so we'll see what happens there. But it's a very solid 2-3 are about the same for me. Though I believe this one with the emotional core will probably grow to be better than the second in time.
I can agree with that. I think in terms of action pacing, I think number 2 is pretty good. But there's a moment where 3 of our main characters make decisions that make no fucking sense.
Yeah.
and it drives me insane. Like I've seen A Quiet Place Part 2, I think 2 or 3 times, and each time I'm just like, why are you doing that? You know better. And it's, oh, we need conflict. Like it feels like a moment where they just were like, we need to make something happen. And I think in this one, because it is such a small, it's in an even smaller scale. Like the first movie is just about a family trying to survive in this world where you can't make sound. And this one, we're laying some breadcrumbs to like, this is how society found out these things. And we're doing it in a story of someone who is literally hours away from death, and they just want to have one last meal. And I think the framing device of that is fantastic. And there's only one scene, I would say 2 scenes in this movie. One is like a legitimate, like, you didn't want to write yourself out of this moment, so you just did something. And then the other one is like, there's the dream sequence jump scare, which I was like, fuck you. There's a moment where they get to her apartment in Midtown Manhattan, and she's like starting to feel the pain of her cancer because she's on like a painkiller patch, and the patch is gone, and she hasn't had one for a full day at this point. And so she's like looking out her window and just like dreaming of what the city used to look like and just having a fond moment. But then like her trauma sets in, and one of the fleas jumps at the screen, and I was just like, you couldn't have done something a little different, because like you could have had it where, oh, it's this idyllic moment in Manhattan on a fall day, and then a flea comes and takes out the mom and dad that are walking down the street or something, or the couple that are walking down the street. You couldn't have that be the jump scare, because like that's maybe it's less impactful. Like you don't get the audience screaming. I had one woman behind me who, she was fun. Like she wasn't annoyingly loud, but she was fun. Like when that happened, she's like, oh damn. And then when there's a moment in the climax of the film where the guy has to jump off the pier, and she screamed, she just let out a oh. She was invested in seeing what was going to happen. But like that one jump scare, I was just like, this is why people hate jump scares.
Yeah, that definitely felt like a studio executive note of like, every 3 to 4 minutes you do need a scare in there. It's like, fine, you're gonna give me, I'm gonna have an emotional moment for 6 to 8 minutes of these characters bonding. I can put in a daydream. All right, okay, and jump scare.
But like, to the movie's credit, that is the last jump scare as well. Like there's tense moments from that point on, but there's never anything that's like, ha, gotcha. And so that's like 20 to 30 minutes of the remainder of the film's runtime that's just completely built around the tension of the moment.
Yeah. So should we head to spoilers, sir?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm gonna say I love the emotional core of it. It's really simplistic. It's not necessarily about survival, because as we discussed, Lupita Nyong'o's Sam character is literally hours from death. But it's the trope of the dying person teaches someone who has given up that it's still okay to live. Because this movie was about 100 minutes. I could have given like 10 more minutes to know a little bit more about Eric's journey, because the first time we're introduced to Eric, he just pops up out of a flooded subway entrance, and it's like, what happened to him? And the movie's like, don't worry about it.
Okay, so when Eric popped up, and yeah, that moment made me just laugh, because one, the way he was looking at Frodo and the way his hair was, I was like, is he bonding with Frodo because his hair right now matches like Frodo's like color on his the coloring on his head? Because in that moment they have Frodo staring whimsically at the camera like, oh, what's this? And he's obviously been hiding in this flooded subway, and so I'm like, are they bonding over fur? But also, he looks like a young Robert Downey Jr.
I can see it.
Yeah, like
his face is a little more smushed, but yeah, I can see it.
And so for a second there, I was like, is this like less than zero Robert Downey Jr.? Like, did they de-age him? But then, yeah, it turns out it's not. That actor's name is Joseph Quinn, who has another big movie coming out this year in Gladiator 2, where he's playing Caracalla.
How dare you call that a big movie?
Well, there's a big budget involved.
Seriously.
So I'm assuming that haircut is because he was playing a Roman emperor and they just rolled right into it.
Sure, they just gave him a little quaff. But yeah, Eric, I think it's not made entirely clear for a while as to like why he's following Frodo and Sam. Jesus, I didn't catch that until now. He's their Smeagol. But like he's following Frodo and Sam because like for some reason Sam or Frodo is the first thing he sees once he escapes the flooded subway tunnels, and he's just like, I need something, and he's just drawn to whatever Sam's doing with the cat. And I feel like that was not made entirely clear, other than the fact that like he needs companionship in some way, because like he has decided he's done, even though he has an opportunity to survive, but he's just like, after what I've already seen prior to me appearing on screen, I'm done, I'm checked out. And through his 2-day journey with Sam, she gives him what he needs to survive and continue living in this new quiet world.
Oh, if I'm stuck in the quiet place environment and I come across a person with a cat, that is my new friend. Like, the cat survived, you're survived, whatever it is you guys got going, I completely buy into. I am sold. This is life now, and I am all for this. But yeah. So I'd like to briefly discuss Jonaman Hinsu, because I owe you $1 because he survives. I was really, really hoping they would cut to the end of Quiet Place 2 at the end of it and show you, like, they show briefly his origin story, which is he's just dude going to a marionette show that the hospice people are all at with his family. I'm like, all right, he has a name. His name is Henry. And that's really it. It's the most uninteresting, like,
it's not even gratuitous. Like, no, it's just a guy that we needed to see a little bit more of, because he dies off screen. I
was like, oh, is he going to be a big part? I expected from the trailers he was going to be a big part of this, because he knows, he's the one who instructs Sam that you must be quiet because of things out there in the world. And I expected some like kind of warrior's backstory. No, he's just a guy making his way through life, disappears for about an hour of the movie, and then is back at the end on a boat.
Now you got me thinking about this bullshit. We have a guy who was in the original Gladiator and the guy who is in the future Gladiator in the same movie.
Yes.
I hate you. I don't know why, but I'm blaming you for Gladiator 2 happening. I have no other outlet.
Hey, don't blame me. Blame Pedro Pascal.
Did you say Peppa Pig?
I said Papa Pedro Pascal.
Papa Pedro Pascal. Okay. Why is Pedro Pascal's fault? He's too busy playing with Baby Yoda. I guess he's the star power to drive it. Maybe you're right. I didn't know
he is the Gladiator in Gladiator 2.
Is he? So, that's unfortunate. He's 50. Why is he the Gladiator?
I don't know.
In ancient Roman times, at 50, he would either be dead or he would be a senator. Like,
it's hard to argue with that logic.
50 back then is Mitch McConnell now. So I really have to get this one off my chest. There's two gripes. One of them is only just like minor, but one, when they went to the gratuitous 9/11 structure outlet where there's like a little bit of world building, where we see one of the fleas. I thought they were egg sacs or something, but apparently they were food. Like, they're converting materials into some kind of food where they like breathe it in.
The nesting scene?
Yeah, like I don't know exactly what was happening, but there's like some world building going on and like a little hint of like what they're doing. And again, I thought that it was like egg sacs. I thought we were getting like an Aliens kind of thing where it's like, oh, there's a queen flea and she's breeding. And no, I don't even know what the hell was happening other than the fact that they like ripped open one of the sacs and started breathing it in. But it was like clearly manufactured by them. But it was also like they're converting like the iron from the girders into whatever they take in for food, which again just kind of like makes the whole concept of these creatures, like if they were subterranean creatures that were from within Earth, I think that might make a little more sense. But because they're just like this seemingly naturally occurring phenomena from space, which is why I call them fleas, like they just hop from planet to planet in my head canon, destroying them and just siphoning them until they explode and then they just fall to the next planet. It's a really weird thing to include where it's like, hey, here's something that they're doing, and it's like, but you're not going to tell us what they're doing. You're not going to have someone like explain it to us. Like there is a movie out there where it's The Other Side of Cloverfield, where like the scene where the girl explodes, where you're in the military base and they find out what's going on. They get little clues. And there's a movie within this part where someone is like spying on it and watching it, but we don't get anything in the scene. And the thing that I'm complaining about is not even that. It's Eric is looking for medicine for Sam. Frodo shows up and lures him away to this nesting ground or whatever it is they're doing. And then Eric decides he's going to climb the girder to get to Sam, or not Sam, Frodo. Eric is climbing the girder to get to Frodo. And we see apparently they have giant fucking fleas as well, which like that, that was cool. But at the same time, I was like, what perspective is this? Because I have no idea what size the other one that we've seen is now. Like, what the hell is happening? Like the visual storytelling is way off in this scene. And so like, apparently there's just like a giant tank flea, and Eric is just up on top of this girder holding Frodo, making as little noise as possible. And then they just cut to the next scene where he's returning to Sam with her medicine. Like, see, getting out of that scene is just as important as getting into it. But they're just like, we don't know how to get him out of it, so we're just going to cut to the next scene, which is the pitch meeting thing I was saying.
Yeah, that to me, that sequence, because that sequence comes deep into the movie, in which they end up at a church, which I love, because churches are supposed to be places where you're quiet and there's reverence and stuff like that. So that they end up being recovered after this excursion through submerged tunnels. And they end up in a church. I actually really liked, because you see the priestess very quietly kind of like giving her last rites and tending to the other wounded. There's people praying. I love that. But yes, Eric goes out to get her medicine because she asked for medicine. And him going and getting it, looking through it, that's perfectly fine. I'm cool with that, because that is a scene that's basically been in, I think, all three Quiet Place now, is some kind of trip to like a Walgreens for medicine. When he leaves and Frodo leads him away, that to me is completely a executive note about we don't have any world building. We haven't established anything at all, because that is one of my gripes, is when the invasion happens, that 9/11 style invasion, smoke, disaster, pods coming from the sky, explosions, people running, screaming, lots of dust. Sam gets knocked out. And then when she wakes up, everybody knows to be quiet. And the military is like flying helicopters above to saying shelter in place and make no sound. I understand the world is that in the first one, it's like a year and a half into it or something, quiet is established. The second one, quiet has been established. I would have liked an establishing scene of people realizing sound is bad. Instead, it leaps past that discovery because we as the audience know the answer. We in that moment, we as the audience need to see the characters discover the answer.
It's a cheap excuse, but I think in the prologue for A Quiet Place 2, they have that scene where they're like hiding in the bar or whatever, and they kind of do reestablish that later on in the theater. once they're on the roof and that one guy is like freaking out, like it kind of gives you context that like someone experienced a moment where everyone was quiet and then someone had a freak out and then that ruined it for everyone. So I think there's some hemming and hawing that you can make about it, but for the most part I don't disagree. I think them knocking Sam out and just cutting to a few hours later is kind of a cop out, especially for a movie that's only 100 minutes. You could take 2 to 5 minutes and have that scene.
That since they ignored that world building, that's why I think they tried to put something there. And I do find it very odd that Frodo has established that Frodo does what Frodo does. I mean, that's what a cat's going to do. They showed Frodo out hunting at one point, looking for mice and stuff, coming across rats and other stuff. But that scene felt so disjointed from the rest of it because he goes up there, he's looking for Frodo. And I do agree that I don't understand what is happening because it is in this building. There's lots of girders. It's the shell. And there's this organic material and these eggs, which I thought they're like, I was with you. I'm like, oh, they're going to show birthing. But they do the chattering kind of call to bring more into the area, more of the fleas. And then they circle around and rip it, and then their mouth. I don't understand. I think you are probably right that this is some kind of feeding ritual.
I mean, it has to be because they're not killing humans for food. So like it feels like what they have to be doing is converting whatever raw materials or refined materials that we have manufactured into food.
Yeah.
And like we don't need an explanation. We don't need all this spoon fed to us. But if you're going to create a world building scene like that, you need to explain it a little better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like maybe because that is a weird moment where you see where he gets up onto the girder and he's high above and you see this giant mecha flea.
And he never comes back either. Like I thought that was a foreshadow for like the climax of the film, but it's a like 30-foot tall flea that is apparently just guarding this food nest.
Right. Maybe they intended for them to be breathing in, eating the substance, and they should have shown like some additional plating going on or a growth pattern, or maybe that's how they kind of like, I don't know. But it was a weird scene that stuck out as, okay, we need a bit of world building. We're 3 movies into this. We haven't established anything other than run.
Yeah.
And run, hide, quiet.
But yeah, that was probably the scene that I got most frustrated by, only because one, they did the easy cut to the next scene out, and then they did a whole world building thing that we get no context for. Like, okay, they're eating, but like, why are they these apex killing machines if they're not eating people and they're just like eating refined materials? Like it's a weird thing. The other complaint I had, which I know we're strapped for time because you got to get out of here soon. So the only other thing I have in my notes that I think is important to bring up is when we get to the climax and Eric escapes with Frodo, he gets on a boat and Sam stays behind. She gives him a clean getaway, and they have this beautiful moment where they go back to a jazz club where her dad used to play piano, and they have this beautiful just like little date kind of thing, but it's not like intimate in the way that it's like, I'm going to kiss you now sort of thing. It's just, he's giving her like one last happy moment, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then we get like one last cut of her walking back with a CD player because her iPod died or something, and then she's charged it, and then she walks out with the iPod still on the dock while she's got her headphones in. And then in the middle of the street, she unplugs her headphones and she just accepts her fate with the fleas. I didn't like that because there's nothing in the movie that is her being like, fuck cancer, I don't want to die from cancer. She's accepted her fate as having, she's going to die from the cancer. There's nothing in the movie that to me is like, she's just, what's the word? She's angry about the cancer. And I would have liked it better if she had stayed in the club, because like the obvious thing is she's going to get eaten or she's going to die. So if they're going to do something like that, I think they just wanted that. They wanted that not so subtle, I'm feeling good moment with the song playing overhead. But I would have liked it better if like maybe you do a little piano intro. Like maybe we know she can play piano because her dad played piano and she talks about how she used to play. So maybe she plays the first few bars of it, or she plays a bit of it until like we hear like a window crash and the fleas are coming into the jazz club at that point. Like I would have liked it better if she took the moment, or we saw the moment where she's just like playing the piano, she's like accepting it, and it's like one more moment with her and her dad. Instead, she's just walking around the streets as the sun's rising. She's feeling good about herself, as the song implies, and we see a flea just jump in behind her, and then we cut to black. I don't know. I didn't like that.
I think I like your reinterpretation of the moment, but I disagree with the emotion. This entire, to me, her journey has been that she has just been in pain and suffering, and she's just waiting to die. They even mentioned in the beginning where they're going into Chicago for the marionette show, and she's like, well, the last time I went to Chicago, I mean, not Chicago, New York, the last time I went was supposed to be my last time, because apparently like she's lived a bit longer than she expected. And then she even mentions she injured her ankle, she's moving slower. Eric's actually helping her get along, and she even mentions like, my entire body is just fire, and that's why she wants the meds. To me, that ending is her making the decision of, I can try to swim out to a boat and maybe survive without meds a little longer, or I can choose to wear out this last patch that has been given to me. I have had my pizza. I've seen the photo. I've had a good last memory with my dad's photo in this place. I'm choosing the time and place and where I'm going to die versus where I'm going to slowly suffer and die. So that's what it hit to me, was she has regained the agency over her body in her moment. I do kind of like the idea of her playing piano, though. I mean, versus kind of like just strolling while listening to Nina Simone.
I can see what you're saying too, and like I interpreted her arc a little differently, because once she's awakened, she reestablishes her motive once she's back in the theater after the fleas drop. She says, I'm going to go get pizza, and she has that moment with her counselor, who eventually dies, that he's like, that's a one-way trip, right? And she's like, I've had a one-way ticket for 2 years now. This is the last thing I'm ever going to do. And whether I get it or I die getting there, I know I tried. Like to me, that was her arc. Like her getting on the boat was never an option. It was always, I'm getting my pizza. That's the last thing I am ever going to do. And that Eric's arc was, I'm going to help this person do it, and if I die along the way, that's fine. And then through their budding relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, he learns that he has a reason to live still, and that's to take care of Frodo.
Yeah. So I will say, so my main complaint is the lack of world building, but there are two distinct moments in this movie that I think definitely earn the price of admission. The first one is where they get to emotionally bond during the thunderstorm. Mm-hmm. They've discovered each other. They're heading to the pizza place. They get to her old apartment and it's raining, and they realize, and she has realized, which I love world building. She realizes that rain and water, these heavy sounds, as long as you're underneath them, you cannot, you're masked. She learns that from two kids that are hiding in a water fountain, which I love that.
It's great visual storytelling and world building.
Beautiful. And so they're in her apartment, it's thunderstorming, and she decides to scream when the thunder happens. And they do that 2 or 3 times, where both of them are just doing this cathartic release of, I can scream at the moment, the frustration, the rage, even just make sound finally after this horrors we've seen all day. Love that. And they didn't hold hands or anything. They weren't like crying together. It was just them beside each other having an emotional release. I love little things like that. Now, the second one, as I'm going to call the zombie moment, because that horrifying military whoever it is, the National Guard, calling people to come to the docks, and the shambling sea of people slowly emerging from the buildings, covered in dust and gore and ichor, and that is a great sequence.
Did such a good job of building the tension, because with like any of these other Quiet Place movies, the sound design is on point. I saw this in IMAX just because I wanted to get the full impact of the sound, and they play with the sound so wonderfully. Like the movie opens with like New York City is at a constant 90 decibel soundscape, and that's like the sound of a constant scream, and they raise it up to that point for probably a good 90 seconds until you get to that point. They hold it for probably 10-15 seconds, and they get to that point again when you have the people just shuffling along together, and it's visualized so well with Lupita Nyong'o just like slowly becoming surrounded by people, and it's like, is she going to be able to escape? How is she getting out of this? Because there's more and more people just surrounding her, and more people making noise.
Right. Yeah. And so she briefly has the tag along of the two kids, because she's like, she knows where there's going to be a boat, and she gets them. So she sends them into the crowd of people, and then she's walking against the crowd of people, which I really like that. It's very visual. Maybe it is a bit on the nose, because yes, she's walking, and especially when it starts getting that she's being jostled by them. It's like, really, we're walking against each other. No one's going to move slightly to the left or right. We're going to just have her jostled constantly. But then you have her start noticing noises, like that person's kind of like dragging their leg. That person's dragging their luggage for some reason. The luggage was like, what is wrong with you?
Someone would have thrown that away. Someone would have been like, you stupid ass. You haven't listened. No pun intended.
Yeah. And you have the luggage being dragged. You have the wheelchair, and it's just like, it's going to get worse, and the crowd is getting thicker. And you have the blaring in the background of, like, come to the dock, blah, 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 blah. And of course, all hell breaks loose. To me, that is beautiful scene. It is well done. It is well worth its budget. It's finally good to see a large group of people in this environment. You see how many survivors were sheltering in place. My only sad complaint about that moment is those kids are dead.
See, I think they wiggled their way around it because they were at the front end of it. So like maybe they weren't in the crowded area that got just destroyed. But yeah, they just shuffled those kids off real quickly, and they were like, please focus on Lupita and don't think about anything else.
Yeah, ignore that. It's perfectly fine. There's lots of screaming. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Lupita's the one, which, by the way, she is brilliant in this role. Her facial expressions, you can read every moment happening with her. I am so happy to see her on screen in a role that is just perfect for her, that she owned and added so much to.
Yeah. I only have one other thing I really need to get off my chest, and it's completely unrelated, but it's something that this movie reminded me of. And it's in the movie, I believe it's Volcano, where after the eruption, everyone's covered in soot, and there's a little kid asking, like, I can't find my mom and dad. And the guy's like, hey, where are they? What do they look like? And the kid looks out at everyone covered in the soot and the ash, and he's like, they all look the same. God, and it's so stupid. And it's like, oh, they solved racism because we're all in the same situation now. And so like Lupita Nyong'o wakes up and she's covered in soot and ash and debris, and I'm just like, racism solved. Because god damn it, Volcano.
Yeah, I hate, as a child, I love, what is it? It was like Volcano, like Eruption or whatever. They came out this.
There's Volcano and there's Dante's Peak.
Thank you, Volcano, Dante's Peak. And it is always what happens, which is there's the good one and then there's the cheesy one. And that one, as a child, seeing that, and I'm like, everybody looks the same. The swelling score and the kind of panning out, everything. As a child, I was just like, no, I know what my parents look like. You're an idiot, kid.
Yeah. I mean, he's 4 or 5. I wouldn't expect my kids to be able to be like, my dad has dark brown hair and thick eyebrows and he looks like a person. Like, yeah, no kid knows how to explain people.
No. But you look and you're like, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen those memes of like people who the parents screw with the kids because like the kid's not paying attention and they like swap out the parent for like a friend or somebody as they're walking, and then the kids suddenly like all of a sudden out of nowhere the kid does like the whiplash double take look of like, wait a second, something's wrong, you're not my parent. Listen to this hand's different.
All right, well, we're gonna get out of here. A Quiet Place, day 1, definitely a must see, especially if you're invested in this universe. If for nothing else, Lupita Nyong'o's performance, because again, this is none of these movies have been like extraordinarily large stakes, but this is a very small personal story that is very good, and it is very much carried by Lupita Nyong'o. I think there are some flaws when they try to get into the world building stuff with these monsters, but I don't think it takes away from the main story.
No, I think it's a great personal story. If you're expecting some kind of audacious world building, military going in there, how it all fell, kind of like World War Z thing, you're not going to get that. You're getting a personal story of one person's tragedy and 2 people briefly bonding, and a really good cat named Frodo.
Yes. But yeah, it's not a survival story. So if you're going in thinking like, oh, it's Cloverfield, they're trying to get out. No, that's not what we're into. This is a character piece, and it's a very good one.
Oh yeah.
All right, Alex, who's doing our remix this week?
He can do it all. Nick Cage. I recently saw the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and
there's
so
something
good. He can't do. Oh, it's so good.
I was not going into that movie expecting to like it, but yeah, it's very good.
Oh, it's great.
All right, so everyone, please don't forget to join our Discord. Join in on the conversation. You can get the link is in our episode description, and you can join all of our friends as well. I have some notes. Fuck My Work Life and Game Club Pod. We're pretty active on all those. You can email us at talk. Excuse me, I'm all sorts of flustered at this point. My tiredness is hitting hard. You can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts, opinions on comics, movies, TV shows, whatever you're watching. Follow us on social media at Talking Smack Pod on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Lonnie's website. Please don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcatcher of choice. I'm done. I'm going to take a nap after this. But most importantly, thank you everyone for listening, and please take care. We will see you next week. And for those of you who are checking everything out, I will be on Review It Yourself between 2 pods, and of course here. So we will see you next week when
something happens.
We're doing What the Fuck is Happening in Hollywood Part 2, which we've undercut ourselves because we've maybe got like 3 straight weeks of really good box office returns.
Everyone, I'm pitching to John Krasinski, and this is trademark. I'm going to start the prequel series. It's A Quiet Place day 1. We're going to have then week 1, month 1, season 1, tax season, the spinoff, year 1, and then this is going to be my favorite, decade 1.
Most importantly, watch Star Trek. Yes.
Who loves T-Smack?
I love T-Smack. Is it true? I do. Ooh.